Hello everyone. So I want to talk about this. You hear it a lot in the Irish mainstream media at the moment, and that's a lot of threats against politicians, particularly Simon House, other politicians too. And I want to talk about the upset, and again, the media won't talk about the other side of it because there's two sides to every story. Why are people so angry? Because there's huge anger in the Irish public. You talk to the random man on the street, the random woman on the street, go around the streets of your local town and ask them how do they feel about life? How do they feel? Ask a young person how do they feel about the country? Do they have much hope they can build a life here, have a future, have a family? And they will tell you there's no hope for them. There's no hope. The only hope is getting on a plane and never to return. And when you see that, and when you see that anger people have, because it's deep resentment, because we see the government, the TDs and the senators, huge amount of money, billions of euro they make a year, and nothing's done to help the only Irish person. And then we see people coming in that we don't even know, get free accommodation, get the whole thing, the whole shebang, and there's people working 40 hours, 60 hours, some 90 hours a week, and they're struggling to put food on the table for their families. And we have to ask ourselves, what kind of Ireland are we living in? What kind of Ireland? And that's why there's so many threats against politicians, because politicians are not doing what people want them to do. Politicians are not looking after the people, they're looking after themselves. And of course, that doesn't justify threatening anybody's family or threatening a politician. At the end of the day, they're just doing their job, etc. But there is a reason behind this. People just don't decide on a random day, oh, I'm going to go and threaten somebody, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. People have a reason behind it. Now, obviously, there's one or two people maybe just hate everything and just want to pick on somebody just because. But the majority of people who are very upset, because again, the thing about it is in a society, the ideal of democracy is that the government listen to the people, what the people want, and change things for the better for society. But what we see in Ireland is the government ignore people and they brush them off and call them labels. And that obviously causes resentment. And of course, when resentment happens, that leads to anger and that leads to people getting violent. Because that's what happens in society. When people are not listened to, people get very violent, very upset. And that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing at the moment. Politicians being threatened because people are very angry because their concerns are not being met. And as I say, it doesn't justify threatening anybody's family or threatening any politician. I say that straight. It doesn't achieve anything. It causes more fear and it causes more hurt in society. Even though you don't like your politicians, and I'd be the first one to say I have not much time for any politician to be telling us in this country. But I wouldn't threaten them or I wouldn't do anything like that. You shouldn't do that to anybody, don't know your politician or your only citizen. But what I'm trying to say, the media should talk about why is this happening? Because this is not just happening because randomly. Some people will do it just randomly because they don't have nobody else to target. But there is a lot of the cases when you see these people, a lot of people are deprived, say for example, getting evicted from a house. There was an incident there once where there was a woman getting evicted and she threatened her local politicians because she was being evicted and the politician wouldn't do anything for her. So you can kind of see, and then we look at all them instances, probably somebody that is in a desperate state that's very upset with the local politician or the local councillor or the local TD, whatever the situation would be. But of course that just doesn't justify threatening anyone. But what I'm trying to say, there's a reason behind why there's so much anger. Because people feel left out, people feel forgotten, particularly Irish people, they feel forgotten in their own country. And that's a very bad feeling. But again, the media should be talking about this. If the politicians address the problems that are there, because there's huge problems. Take for example, if you're somebody that's literally on a waiting list for hip surgery or back surgery, and you're waiting 5 to 10 years, you're going to get very angry. You're in a lot of pain in your bed where your politicians pocket all the money. You get very angry. And take for example, you have a young child that needs extra help. Take for example, special needs assistance, and they're told, we get there at some point. We get you a special needs assessment at some point in the next 10 years when they're about 50 years old. We get there, but take for example that you get very angry. And there's many other incidents. Take for example, there's many children who have mental health struggles, and their parents are desperately trying to get them, get them seen to get them some kind of psychological help, and the state is nowhere to be found to help them. Then we talk about housing. There's people literally homeless that has nothing. Mainly Irish people. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is you would see the anger and stuff. But again, I can't emphasize this. This just doesn't justify going around threatening people and threatening to harm people, etc., etc. It shouldn't happen in a sane society, in a democracy. But what I'm trying to say, we have to get understanding why this is happening too, because the reason how you're going to stop this, if the government addresses problems that it is in society, like these things that are in society, because people would be happy if things worked well, if society worked well, but Irish society is totally messed up at the moment in every conceivable way, you look at it. But of course, and as I say, I don't want to be sitting here justifying people being threatened and stuff. That's not what my aim is. But I'm trying to say there's a reason why people are very angry. Because that's what's happening. We see the anger in society. As I said in the beginning of this video, if I went into my local main town now in the morning and went on the street and recorded an hour or two and went around and asked every person I met, are you happy with the current state of the country? Are you happy in your personal life? Are you happy with your financial status? And the majority, 99.9% of people would say no. And the majority of young people would say, I'm getting out of this dump. And that's what they would say to you. And that doesn't, you would understand why people, because anger leads to resentment, and then that leads to violence. That's what happens. Because it's not what Irish people deserve. Irish people deserve to be looked after in their own country. But, we see the government is not doing it. As that, so you would understand. And it's kind of creating division. That's what's creating in society. Because it's the government against the people. And that's what's happening, we're seeing in society nowadays. But it's quite insane what's happening. But again, all this could be avoided if they just do what they need to do to help the people of Ireland. They won't do it. They're looking after themselves. They're looking after the European Union. They're looking after other people that's from Timbuktu. And they're looking after, first of all, Davos, of course. They're looking after them, of course. But that's why there's so much upset and hatred in society. But as I said at the beginning of this video, you should never threaten anybody, regardless if it's a politician, your neighbour, your friend, whoever. You shouldn't do it. Simple as that. It's not nice to threaten. I had people often threaten me on YouTube and stuff like that, even though I don't know them and stuff like that. People get, obviously politics can be, it can cause a lot of resentment, anger, etc., etc., just by design. It's a very divisive topic. But at the same time too, you shouldn't go and, even if you just disagree with them on political terms or whatever the political statement and stuff, you shouldn't do that. Because that straight away loses the argument when you go around just threatening to hold somebody. You shouldn't do that. But that's what I'm trying to say. But there is a reason. There's a reason, and there's a reason why so many people are upset, because the majority of people are not happy. There's nobody really I know, to be totally honest, in my personal life that's happy at the current state of time. What I mean by happy is the financial state is good, and they're not worried about being homeless or not being able to afford to feed themselves. There's nobody I know. Everybody's always concerned that the next day could be they might never be able to eat again, or they might die because they have no home for themselves. That's what they're afraid of. And then if, take for example, they take bad, they wait for an ambulance for 6 or 7 hours and they'll be dead by that time. Take for example, there's many people like that. And then there's many people I know, young people, that I don't even know where to start, to be totally honest. They can't afford to go to, they're struggling to get to college, they're struggling to pay the bills, they're struggling to, there's just a list of stuff. I couldn't even go through it all. And, and the only people to blame is the government, because a lot of people I know, and there's a lot of young people, take for example, they're working part-time jobs and going to college, trying to get themselves through college. We're working part-time. And these are Irish people. And they're doing their best. And the government's out to fuck them over in every conceivable way. And that's what's happening. Because these people are actually getting out and doing something and wanting to work and contribute to society. But the government comes along and fucks them over. And then the person that's from Timbuktu comes in here and does get everything handed to them, and it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion. But because the person who should be going out and doing their best should be getting a bit of, what I mean by that is met halfway. I'm not saying the government should give them things for free and stuff, but of course the government should be a bit more lenient with them in terms of taxation, etc., etc. But that's a story for a different day, I suppose, than that. But yeah, so let me know what you think, because there's a reason. Like OT in the mainstream media are saying it's just randomly happening. There's a reason behind all this. And that's because people are very angry. And we have to try and tone down that anger, of course. But the only way you do that is by doing things to help people in society, to easing the burden on people. Take, for example, the cost of living, housing particularly, wet in terms of people, because people are basically working just to pay their bills at this stage. They have nothing left over at the end of the week. And people are very resentful for that, because take, for example, if you're a young person in their 30s, in their early 30s, you're thinking this is the rest of my life, working for a dead shitty job for the government, for the benefit of the Irish fucking politicians sitting in Dáil Éireann. The majority of people would think like that, and there'd be much resentment from that. But anyway, let me know what you think, subscribe more, and bye.